Hi everyone, Psycho Sorcerer here, and today we're talking about the only thing you'll ever need to do everything in magic. That's right, a single method to do absolutely everything that magic is talking about. Now, this isn't something I've talked about directly before, but it's kind of hinted at in all of my videos, and actually I've only stumbled upon it quite recently, even though it's been there before our eyes this whole time. So we're going to be going through everything that I've talked about in the lecture series and how it could fall into this model. So let's go into the model first. Step 1. Decide on an intent. Step 2. Visualize it and push your emotion into it. Step 3. Let it out into the universe. Let's keep those three next to me for the remainder of the video, because it's very important. To run through them really quickly, decide on an intent. What does that mean? Figure out what you want. It sounds pretty simple, but every magical practice has a step like this, because there's always something you have to do in preparation for whatever ritual it is you're going to do. This is a very, very needed step. The more commitment that you have to put into something before going to ritual, the more potent it's going to be when you're at your ritual. Deciding isn't just about coming up with something on a whim, it's about figuring out exactly, specifically, how you want something to be worded, if it's going to be something with a phrase, or what you want to draw, if it's going to be a sigil. Whatever it is you want, it's getting all of the specifics set out. And the point is, above all else, to simply decide what it is that you want to change in your life or in the universe. That sounds easy, but again, like I said, it's hard. Because you might think at first, oh, I want money. But then whenever you think about it for a while, maybe that's not actually what you desire. And if it's not actually what you desire, you're going to have a hard time making it come to be. Because when you step into the circle or do whatever it is that you're going to do, it's your actual desire, it's your actual will that usually will try to manifest. So if you're not in touch with what it is you actually want, then you're not going to have a lot of success. So step 1 is always to decide what your intent will be. And that intent is what you purely want. And in almost every case, the strongest way to tell is, if I had to sacrifice everything else for this one thing, would it be worth it? And if the answer is yes, then you've found your intent. Step 2, visualize and push your emotion into it. These could be considered 2 steps, but not always. And the reason they've been combined here is because in different practices, you'll either do one, the other, or both. Most of the time, both. Visualization is the key to focusing your conscious mind on something that your subconscious mind understands. That's because the subconscious mind understands symbols, and all of magic is getting the conscious mind to talk to the subconscious mind. So if you can consciously give purpose to a symbol or give purpose to something that you're visualizing, then when you see that same thing visualized with your subconscious mind, it understands and gets what you're trying to do. The emotional focus is the push you need to tell the subconscious mind that this is something that you truly want, because the subconscious mind works on emotion as opposed to on logical, rational reasoning. So if you can align your logical, rational thinking with an emotional feeling, you're able to push this into reality. And what you're going to find as we go over all the different versions of magic we've talked about here and compare them to these steps is that the most commonly used emotion is gratitude. And by gratitude, you may even call it love. A lot of New Agers would say use the emotional vibration of love, but this is confusing to a lot of people. We're not talking about romantic love. We're not talking about lust. We're talking about a sort of awe, a love for everything around you. When you have that night where you walk out on a starlit sky and you look into it and you have a moment where you're just thankful to be alive, that gratitude, that love, that emotion is what we're talking about with gratitude or love. That emotion, if you're able to take that emotion and conjure it up on command, then you're going to be able to do a lot of power in your spell working. Lastly, the final step is always to let it out into the universe. What do we mean by this? Well, if you're looking at the spiritual model, we're talking about concentrating, focusing on this visualized thing, like we've said, sending your energy into it, and then when you're done, spreading it out. You kind of think of it as if you're sending your own energy outward. If you're looking at it from a psychological model, then it's letting it go. accepting that the change that you're trying to put into yourself or into the world has worked, and letting it go. Not dwelling on the ritual, not dwelling on whether it worked or not, just moving forward with your life, accepting as a fact that you did what you could do. And that's it. These are the 3 steps. And as we look into this, what you're going to find is that everything we've talked about on this channel up till now can be accomplished with these 3 steps. Now these 3 steps aren't in and of themselves easy. A lot of the practices are more specific for the reasons of trying to get you in the right state to do these steps well. But as we go through them, you're going to start to see the similarities here. And let's get started with the obvious, spellcasting. In my spellcasting lecture, I had 5 steps for performing all spells. 1. Decide. 2. Experience. 3. Action. 4. Conceal. And 5. Manifest. If you look at these, they're actually the same steps as the 3 we just talked about. They're just split up in a different way. First, you decide on your intent. Then, you have to use an experience, an emotion. You have to experience that intent as if it has already come to pass. In other words, you have to be thankful for it and have the right type of gratitude that you would feel, the right loving emotion that would overcome you if it were to come to pass. The third one is the action, which is usually to perform the ritual. In this case, it's almost always a visualization, or it could be sigil magic, but sigil magic is just a different form of visualization where you're looking at something you've already drawn instead of visualizing something in your mind. Fourth, there's conceal. This step was always designed to let go of whatever it was you were thinking about, to let it out into the universe, so to speak. And lastly, there's manifest, which is to accept any opportunities that show up that might lead you to what it was you were casting for. This is why it's important to make a distinction about the difference between concealing and forgetting about what you're trying to get. You're allowed to remember that you want something. In fact, it helps you a lot with spellcasting if you're avidly working toward whatever the goal is that you're casting toward, because this will give you more opportunities that can come up in your life in order to bring you there. The key with concealment, or with letting it go, is to let go of the desire to cast another spell about it. Let go of the desire to question if your spell worked. Let go of thinking about the ritual. Let go of constantly going back in your mind and saying, did I do this right? Did I do that right? As long as you do that, the spell hasn't been let go. And if it hasn't been let go, then it hasn't been sent out. And if it hasn't been sent out, then it won't manifest. From a psychological point of view, it's when you let it go that your subconscious mind accepts it as fact and allows it to come to pass. So it's pretty easy to see how spellcasting and sigil magic go hand in hand with the 3 steps that we've put up here. It's just a different wording, arrangement of the 3 steps. So you might ask, why even rearrange them when they already worked so well? Because these 3 steps are going to work for everything else we've talked about. Let's dive deep into it now with servitors. We've talked about creating a servitor before. The first thing you're going to need to do is decide what kind of servitor you want to create. And, in case any of you don't remember from the earlier lessons, a servitor is a created entity of your own imaginings in order to perform a task. It's pretty much the same idea as creating a spell, except that instead of trying to come up with a concept and visualize it and then send it out, you are visualizing an entity that is capable of performing whatever it is that you want done and then letting it go out into the universe. Once again, you start by deciding what it is you want this entity to do. Oftentimes with servitors, they do something repeatedly, whereas when you do spell casting, you do it once, which is your reason for making a servitor. You want to make something that continues to do something over and over again instead of just having a single effect. But that decision process is the most important thing. That's also where you come up with what your servitor is going to look like, what your servitor would act like, what your servitor is capable of doing and what they're not capable of doing so they don't overstep their bounds. All of this is just a way of getting yourself to understand exactly what you want. You could even go as far as to say that perhaps the servitor doesn't exist. From a psychological model, you're just spellcasting. The only difference is that you're focusing on the concept of a servitor so that you can conceive of this spell as a repeated spell, whereas just trying to picture a result seems to be a one-time thing. But regardless of whether you're creating an actual entity or whether it's psychological in nature, the process remains the same. Once you've decided exactly what you want out of your servitor, You visualize that servitor and you push your emotional energy into it, and then you let it go out and do what it is it's supposed to do. And while it's doing that, anytime that you notice successful results from it, you give gratitude to the servitor to energize it. Now, this gratitude is the same emotion we were talking about before, so it's almost like you're doing a mini spell every time that it does something right. Almost like perhaps you're recasting the same spell, and the servitor is more of a reminder that you're doing this. Now, I can't say for sure whether the servitor is a real entity or a psychological reminder allowing you to cast an automated spell, but again, the results are the same either way. Having talked about servitors, let's talk about ancestral veneration. Anytime that you have a deep connection with your ancestors, or perhaps even with a patron of some sort or a saint, you often have a shrine or something set up to them, but there is a common practice to sit with that shrine and give it gratitude, to think about the ancestor and send them love and thanks. And then oftentimes people will ask for guidance from these particular individuals, and they will send them love and thanks. Once again, you're deciding who it is you wish to speak to from your own ancestry or from patronage or from saints, and you are sending out a conceptualized idea of a question you have for them, or a desire you wish to have with them in your life, or simply trying to reach out and connect to them, and sending a loving and gratitude-filled energy. And once you have done that, you accept that that's been sent, you let it go, and you wait. And when you wait in stillness and calmness, knowing that it's already happened, sometimes some of us actually hear something in response. And others who send it out and then go about their day will find things that happen in their day-to-day life that seem to be related to supernatural happenings. This leads us directly into evocation, which is more or less the same thing. We always have to decide what it is that we want to evoke, whether it's a demon, an angel, a spirit, a deity, and which one specifically. And then we usually create a sigil for it, or we do other methods in order to reach out to it. What we usually say is we try to reach a vibration with it, or reach a resonance with the entity. You try to feel emotionally within the self as if you are connected to that entity, and you visualize either by staring at a sigil, or by trying to focus on a black mirror, or by trying to look into smoke, or by scrying into water, or by looking into a flame, what have you. You visualize while sending emotion. And the desire in this case is the desire to connect with whatever it is that you chose. And once you've made that connection, you let go of all of that and allow the information to come into your mind and flow through you. Or you let go of everything that's happened and accept that whatever you've asked of the entity or requested will come to you through other means, and then go about your life, and those things happen. It's starting to look a lot like all of these things may be interrelated, and may all be the same thing in a certain way. From the psychological viewpoint, it seems obvious that these would all fall into the same category as spellcasting. They're just different methods of doing it, and different visualizations to allow you to do things that are maybe hard to visualize on a spellcasting level. From the spiritual point of view, however, you may go the other way around with it. It may make more sense to you to believe that these entities are real, your servitors are real when you create them, your ancestors still live on the other side, and when you're doing spellcasting, you're really just reaching out to these same entities. It's just that you have left off the step of specifying which entity you're reaching out to. More specifically, perhaps you're reaching out directly to the all itself, the interconnecting force that is in everything, inside of the divine spark within all of us, and calling upon that, or calling upon your own power. So from a supernatural point of view, all of these things are basically doing the same thing. They're just using different entities to do it, whether it be yourself, one you've created, one you're related to, or one you've called upon. From the psychological point of view, all of these things are methods of controlling the subconscious mind with the conscious mind, and it's just different forms of visualization in order to get the right message across. To take it a step further, let's look at banishings and cleansings. When you do a banishing, the first thing you need to do is decide what kind of banishing you want to do. Are you looking to do a simple banishing that you do before a ritual in order to get rid of negative energies and entities, or from a psychological point of view, to get thoughts out of your head so that you can concentrate on the current task? Or are you looking to do something like a full cleansing bath to get rid of something that feels like it's hanging over you, to bring yourself to kind of a cleaner state, to let something that's been bothering you out, or to perhaps get rid of a curse if you believe such things exist? Or are you trying to do some kind of a magic to get rid of a baneful curse or create some form of protection in order to reverse curses back at those who would send them to you? Any of these sorts of things are considered banishings or cleansings. But again, the first step was to decide which one you're doing and for what purpose. After you do that, there's always a visualization component, whether you're in the shower and you're visualizing a dirtiness coming off of you as the water goes across you, or whether you are performing a lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram and you're drawing pentagrams with your fingers and visualizing flame where the pentagram is drawn and casting forces through those pentagrams. There's always a visualization element. An emotional element, usually of sovereignty, a feeling of being in control of the self and being connected to the universe, is what's used. But again, this is a sort of gratitude, a sort of loving energy of the self. You're using the love and gratitude, but this time inward, because your direction when banishing and cleansing is inward on the self. And finally, a letting go as you complete the ritual, which is letting go of whatever it was you were trying to banish so that it can actually go away from you. Talismans and ritual tools are also created in this way. Oftentimes, if you want to make a ritual tool special for the spells you're casting or to be used in ritual, you're going to take the tool, focus on it, imagine energy coming from yourself into the tool, visualize energy flowing into the tool, have a purpose that you decided upon for the tool, what this tool will represent once it has this energy in it, and you will push emotion into loving this tool and thanking it for the service it will give you, and then you will let go of that energy and see it enter the tool. Your tool is done. You no longer need to do anything else to make it sacred and yours. The same with a talisman. If you're going to make a talisman that's supposed to represent a certain thing or enhance a certain power, it all works the same way. This leads quickly into energy work. Energy work is any working where you visualize the chakras or energy pooling within the center of yourself, and that energy coming out of you to do something, whether it be energy healing, whether it be alignments within the chakras, whether it be energy arcing up your back in order to have a kundalini experience, whether it be energy tendrils coming out of your back and attaching to other people to pull their energy into you with psychic vampirism. Whatever it be, there's a strong visualization element in energy work. And the emotional element is actually the feeling of that energy moving through you. Now, there's an argument that's always had between people like me and people who believe the energy is real, and yes, I believe there's a real element to it, but not a physical element to it. To me, the feeling is emotional. To some, the feeling is a real something happening in their body, a true vibration. That's not what here or there. The point being that the emotion you're supposed to be feeling here is the feeling of that energy, which will feel like a blissful, joyous power. For obvious reasons, it's a gratitude and loving energy. So first, decide what you're going to do your energy work for. Are you going to heal? Take energy? What? Then visualize the energy in your body doing that thing, moving in the ways that you were asking for. Emotionally feel that energy flowing. And when done, let it go and experience the results. Divination is a little harder to understand. We think of divination as looking into the future or using tarot cards to read what the future holds for us, or perhaps just simply learning things that are hidden about ourselves and others through these sorts of methods. But what are the real steps? First, you decide what it is you're trying to do. Are you going to ask a question? Are you going to look into the future? Are you going to search inward? Are you going to do a reading for someone? A decision is made. Second, you pour your energy into these cards, or you ask the person you're working with to do the same when they select them. And you visualize these questions being asked to the cards and the answers within the cards when you see them, or whatever method you use, but cards are the easiest example. When you see the card, you don't simply read the card for what it is. You look at it and analyze it and see what comes to mind. This visualization is what gets you in touch with the subconscious. You're saying, subconscious, I want to do this. I'm going to push energy and gratitude and energy into it, and then flip the card and look. And as I focus and visualize on this card, what I want you to do is tell me what it means and get that feedback to come through. You get that feedback from the subconscious. Now, if it's psychological, all you're doing is opening the pathway now for your subconscious to speak to your conscious mind. If it's supernatural, then your subconscious mind somehow has a tap to whatever the supernatural reality is, which by now you should see in the themes of everything I'm talking about. And you're just opening up that pathway to speak to whatever it is that you normally would see yourself as communicating with. But the point being, once again, decide what it is you're going to ask, visualize, push your emotion into it, and in this case, instead of letting it go, you're allowing it to feedback. You're allowing it to come back through, and the letting it go is in accepting what you're getting. Because it's going to sound like your own thoughts, but it isn't. And I mean, it is, it's your subconscious, but it isn't your common thinking mind. And as you get used to doing this, it'll become more apparent that it's different. But at the beginning, you just have to accept that the thoughts that start coming to you when you do this are real. They are what you're looking for. And they are going to be inspiring and helpful. And if you can accept that, that acceptance is the letting it go. That acceptance is letting go of the question and allowing it to happen. Do you want to have a lucid dream? We all do. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But how do we go about making it happen more often? Well, first we have to decide we want to have a lucid dream, and almost always it's more effective if before going to bed you tell yourself, I'm going to have a lucid dream tonight. A lot of people will also use a method to try to help them. This method will either be to focus on something right before sleep, or to wake up in the middle of the night, go back to sleep, and then focus on something. But the focusing on something is usually a visualization. Perhaps it's descending a staircase very slowly while allowing your body to feel like it's going to sleep. We also, if we've learned what I'm starting to learn, push a sort of gratitude and love into the feeling of it. And if you do that, it's going to happen more strongly. If when you become lucid in your dream, your reaction isn't surprise and shock, but rather just gratitude for it, you're going to have a more intense, more long-lasting lucid experience. And also, letting go. You can't have a lucid dream if you don't go to sleep. So if you're going to do a visualization, you're going to push gratitude into it, you're going to do this process to try to get a better lucid experience, you still have to let it go slowly as you fall asleep and allow what's going to happen. Finally, astral travel. Now, we all know I've had trouble with astral travel in the past. We've talked about how it seems a little touch and go for me, and my old method was always to use a lucid dream in order to astral travel. Recently, I've been experimenting with a couple other methods that have been working really good, but I want some more experience with it before I start trying to teach it to you guys. The long and the short of it is, part of my problem when I've tried to astral travel before, and I have to thank a viewer of mine who's also becoming a good friend of mine for this information. I'll leave him unnamed in case he wants to remain anonymous, but he knows who he is. Part of my problem was I was focusing on the act of getting out of my body, or on the act of doing something, as opposed to a place. So instead of trying to project out of my body, what I should have been focusing on was the place that I want to project to. And not visualizing the place as if it's there, but rather visualizing myself being there. Don't think about what should be there. Just visualize yourself being there. And by that I mean emotionally feel as if you're in the place, what you would think you would feel if you were there, and visualize in your head the location as if it's a location on a map, or as if you happen to be standing there, like the feeling you would have if you're standing there is all you want to concentrate on. And then as you concentrate, decide to be there. And I've only been doing this the past week, but so far, in every attempt I've had, it's worked. So if this continues for the next few weeks, I'm going to try to refine this and then get it into something that I can share. Now, this doesn't fall exactly into these 3 rules, but it's pretty close. Once again, you have to decide, but this time you're deciding where to astral travel to, where to astral project to. Then you're going to use an emotional desire to be in that place, merged with the emotional feeling of being in that place, and a sort of gratitude for being there. And visualize yourself just, it's hard to say, because you don't want to visualize the place around you. It's the one thing that's confusing about this, but visualize the target, I guess is a better way to put it. For example, if I wanted to go to the den of Tiamat, I don't try to visualize what it looks like to be in Tiamat's den. I visualize Tiamat. I decide to go to Tiamat. I visualize Tiamat. I emotionally feel as if I am where Tiamat is, as opposed to calling Tiamat in, and accept that I'm there. And so far it's been working. Some final thoughts on this on training. The only other thing we've really talked about on my site, other than these things, is meditation. Why? Because these steps are well and good, but they only work if you have control over your focus, control over your thoughts, and are willing to accept outcomes. And how do you train yourself to accept the moment? How do you train yourself to have stronger focus? And how do you train yourself to control your thoughts? Meditation. So all the focus we put on meditation is as a training mechanism to make you better at these 3 steps. And that's pretty much it. So in closing, everything you can do in magic is done with these 3 steps. There's nothing else you need. It's the only thing you really need to understand in order to understand how magic works. All of the different methods are just different ways of using these steps, ways that wouldn't be obvious if you had the steps alone by themselves. Why do these things work? That's a question for philosophical purposes. Is it psychological? Is it spiritual? That doesn't change what steps we use. These 3 steps can be used for absolutely everything. Now remember, whether you believe that you're speaking to entities or a higher self, whether you believe that you're only getting messages from your subconscious to learn about the self, psychological, spiritual, it really doesn't matter. The result is that there's a give and a take. You can use these steps to send an intent out to make a change, and that change will either happen to the self or will somehow happen in the world around you, because I believe one way or another the subconscious is attached to the rest of the world in a way we don't yet understand. The other option is to use these methods to call information in, whether it be just to pull information from your subconscious or whether it be to call it from elsewhere, because again, I believe it's connected in a way we don't understand. These methods are either to send intent out or to send out an intent to get something back. In fact, I guess these methods are just to send out an intent to get something back. It's just, is the intent to cause a change, or is the intent to get information back, to get a connection, to get an experience to astral project? Is the thing you're sending out you? Is the thing you're bringing back the experience? Is the thing you're sending out a desire? Is the thing you're getting back a material gain? Is the thing you're sending back a request? Is the thing you're getting back a connection or information? All of these things are different ways to use this. So in the simplicity, it's also very complex. But if you can understand these 3 steps, then read up on whatever it is that you're interested in magic and try to take what you're reading and apply these steps to it. You're going to find that what you're reading makes a lot more sense, that what the person is trying to convey in the writing makes a lot more sense because it's just a method of doing this. We'll get a little more in detail about where I came up with this in next week's video, and we'll also be talking about my servitors that I talked about in a candid discussion. A part of me feels like this video would have been a great end to the lecture playlist, but I just can't end it without at least touching base on the servitors once more to tell you how everything's gone now that we're reaching 3 months, which was the exact amount of time I was supposed to work with them. And you might be surprised by what I believe now. Until next time, safe travels.
Thanks for watching. If you liked that video, give it a thumbs up, and if you want to stay up to date with the latest, click subscribe. If you're interested in watching some more videos, check out my channel's playlist section. I've broken all my videos into playlists there. Here are 4 of my most popular playlists, available to watch now. As always, thanks for your support, and I wish you safe travels.